Welcome back to the Eric Krown crypto channel. Wishing you a happy early start to this nice Friday morning over here from a very busy day, actually, of which there is actually plenty to talk about on the higher term timeframes and even on the lower term timeframes. And definitely on this particular video, there's going to be a major bifurcation between those two timeframes as well. So other than that, I want to first follow up on the higher term timeframes because major setups are starting to occur and likely take us into the heart of May. Anyways, other than that, I should once again give the spotlight to the good old Bybit promotion going on right on over here, which is offering 0% on maker fees for derivative contract orders. And you can even get the Jewel Light for free for the first 30 days if you follow the directions in the link in the description below. All right, sweet. Let's just jump right into it and start off right here on the 2-day time frame. Following up on the 2-day time frame, regular bearish divergence of the two drives variety coming off the last couple highs here. That has been confirmed as of last night's closure, as Bitcoin definitely did close below about $29,000. And so coming into next week, I do think that there is reasonable concern, or I mean maybe pleasure, depending upon your disposition in this market, for a move down somewhere around the 21 exponential moving average, which is typically a high probability play based off of divergence like this, which is not like a tremendously concerning one, but in this case, $27,000 or a little bit above 27,000 to be exact, 27,120 is where the yellow 21 exponential moving average is at the current moment in time. So probably coming into next week, at some point, looking somewhere down around there, and likely a bounce within that region as well. This again relative to the higher term timeframes. We're going to go over the lower term timeframes in a bit here. So do understand that things, will be a bit different there. Anyways, the reason why this is so important and the reason why I start off the analysis with this particular one is because this can obviously bleed on into the 2-day time frame setup that is starting to become more and more relevant over here. So this is yet again another volatility versus stochastic momentum setup. We've seen several of these on different time frames. We've seen several of them play out in the last few months or in the last year since we really started speaking about them quite frequently on this channel. And there is yet another one occurring right in front of our very faces, but it is not firing off just yet. Very clear. Not firing off just yet, but I do think that it's relevant to be bringing into the conversation now because we can see, one, that volatility is at extreme lows, or it was at extreme lows, and we're very likely going to spend some time within these extreme lows. So I do expect this to kind of come down, spend a little bit of time maybe over the next few periods, going back down somewhere around 10 percentile, and then going for that expansion phase. These signals where we typically see an initial move and then a resetting below the critical level, those are typically very, rather large moves, if you will. And then, of course, that coupled up with the direction of the stochastic oscillator has had a high correlation in getting the next major direction for that, 20 to 30% move. In this case, and the reason why I bring it up is because the 2-day time frame stochastic oscillator is pointed to the downside, in fact, very heavily to the downside, and will be remaining with downside pressure on price action as long as Bitcoin is below 30,700. So that's a new pivot as of now. So do keep that in mind. That is to say that, downside more likely probably into May. Referencing the data that I've harvested for all of these particular setups that we've seen over the past, actually full history of Bitcoin, basically going back to February of 2012. That was the first setup that we actually saw with this particular one. There's been 19 downside ones. Obviously, there's been upside ones as well, but in this case, downside more likely. And out of the 19 downside ones, the direction of the stochastic oscillator was correct in, getting downside pressure on price action 16 out of 19 times, which gives it a pretty high strike rate here at about 84.25%. Or around there over the course of an average of about 14 days. Yeah, there's some variance in there. Sometimes around about 3 weeks, sometimes just about 1 week, but yeah, about 14 days, 2 weeks is the average in this case. And the average return, 25 to 26% with the standard deviation of 8. So that gives us a range between about 18.5 to 34% on the upper end. So going back into it over here and assuming that this one probably fires off at the end of next week, if I had to guess. Maybe, is the end of next week May? No, it's not. It's one more week from there. So sometime between the end of next week and the week after that is very likely when this one does fire off. And if the direction of the stochastic oscillator is still positioned to the downside, as you can see, downside is going to be more likely. likely we probably see a big pullback to open up May, which just May in general actually has been a general downside month for most markets, and Bitcoin included. Out of 13 Mays, 10 of them were either sideways or down. And could this be the pullback that I think a lot of people are looking for? Probably, yeah. Assuming that it does occur. So again, this is not active as of right now, but coming into next week, this is going to be like a big deal, at least to me. Of course, if we do start to interpret or entertain potential downside areas of interest, 18% off current price action brings you back where? A little bit above $25,000. Now, remember that $25,000 is a pretty big pivot on the monthly, and then also that would be on the lower end as far as these returns typically do go. Which, fair enough, that would be reasonable in my opinion, just because right now, I still do think that Bitcoin's in an overall transitionary market, coming off of from bull to bear. From bear to bull, but it's neither bullish nor bearish right now. It's just kind of sideways in the greater scheme. And in this case, we just saw a major move to the upside, about 100% move off the lows. It's reasonable to be looking for a greater pullback. In my opinion, sometime in May, most likely. Anyways, on the upper end, if things get really crazy, which I'm not saying that they are, but if they do, 30, what was it, like somewhere around 30% would put Bitcoin at around like $21,000 to $20,000. So that I think that would be like kind of worst case scenario, coming into a correction, starting May and maybe carrying out through summer. So again, once that does fire off, typically does happen relatively fast, over the course of 2 weeks for, like a 20, about a 20% move, basically. Probably going to happen pretty damn fast once it gets going. And again, as long as the stochastic oscillator on the 2-day time frame is positioned to the downside more likely. And now also that I recognize it, there is a nice regression coming in from the last few major lows. This was governing the lows of September of 2022, connected with November of 2022, again in January lows of this year, and once again in March lows of this year here as well. So does it come back down for another swing here and fulfill that trend line? Perhaps yes. Obviously, that would imply downside pressure in the more intermediary term. Anyways, moving on now, I do want to get into just general, we should go over general ranges over here, and then I do want to get into a short-term time frame setup because it's going to be completely different than what we've been looking at as of right now. Daily time frame, as you can see on the HPDR indicator, is actually resting on the current range lows, which is about 28,200, which was a target based off of the break of about 20, I think it was like 29 and change the other day, below $30,000 the other day. Now in this case, do we expect to bounce off this region first and foremost? I think it is reasonable to say, again, bounce, not the same thing as reversal, but to put it like very, very bluntly now, as long as Bitcoin's below $30,000, pressure remains to the downside more likely coming into next week and probably even May as well. If Bitcoin can reclaim $30,000, that would be the trap situation, the bear trap situation in this case. And at that point, we'd probably be looking at somewhere between like $32,500 to $33,000, maybe coming into like early May, if I had to guess. But for right now, again, assuming that Bitcoin does not reclaim that region, again, all bounces are just that, bounces before continuation to the downside. So is there anything in the short term that is suggestive that, Bitcoin might have a chance for that? Well, actually there is, or potentially is, because it's not quite there just yet, but there is a potential major setup brewing over here on the 4-hour HPDR indicator, and also even on the Jewel light as well. But I'll go over the HPDR indicator setup here, just because I do think that this one will likely have a lot of weight, if it does fire off, contrary to yesterday's one and the day before that, those ones I was, not really a big fan of. In this case, I do think that this one, if there's going to be one that works out this week, it's going to be this one. And so on the 4-hour time frame right here, we can see several closes below the blue 50% range lows, as you can see. And that obviously initiates a secondary condition where we look for a decrease on the volatility moving average represented by the BBWP indicator right here. That has not happened as of just yet. But as you can see in this next closure coming in about 2 hours and 50 minutes and 2 seconds from now, well, on the next closure, that decrease, that downtick on the volatility moving average will be confirmed, assuming that Bitcoin doesn't do something really crazy in the next 3 hours. Hey, crazier things have happened, obviously, like no shit. But for right now, it does look rather likely. Once that does happen, there is a higher probability of a bounce in the short term, when we've tested when we use the back tester to test setups with that particular signature, we found that 77% has a 77% strike rate for a pretty decent bounce in the short term. What was the average winning trade in this particular case? So average, basically average bounce. If we can go over here and reference performance summary, just under 4% at about 375. So keep that in mind. There was a top end at 5% for this particular one. So let's just see. First things first, we'd actually have to kind of guess where that would actually close. This current one would actually close, but let's just say it's like right here. 375 puts you where? Puts you at 29,200. Obviously not 30,000 bucks. So not, even if it does play out, it's probably just a bounce. Even if I take it from like a more lenient area right here where price action is currently trading, that still would barely get you around like 29.5 region. So, maybe we see a bounce there in the short term coming in, before next week, something like that. But again, anything below 30,000 bucks is just, unimpressive, or it's not that it's unimpressive. It's just irrelevant as far as any of the higher term time frame setups go. So do keep that in mind, or at least, maybe be aware of that. Let me see what even the maximum would be. 5% on this particular one. Yeah, that actually does get you pretty damn close to 30,000 bucks. So that certainly could happen. It's possible. I would say it's just not probable. What I think is probably most likely is maybe get like one more wick down here, then you try for a bounce into like the low 29s, and then maybe like end of next week, maybe closer to May, that's when you do start to see things curl back on over. Something like that would kind of make sense. But for right now, playing within this region right here, completely fine. This would be invalidated, I should say. And let me just actually look at the downside here. Yeah, that would actually be really, really nasty. But if it does get invalidated, you will see a closure below about 27.8, and at that point, at that point, have to be looking towards that low $27,000 target right on over here in the more short term. So again, very, 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 very short term. Is Bitcoin more likely to bounce? Assuming that this next closure does fulfill that particular condition, yes, bounce. Not the same thing as reversal. Likely rolls on over next week and fulfills some sort of a test down around here. To the 21 on the on CME, and then the real question is, do things stay down around there? Do things essentially lead into that next 2-day major signal over here on the volatility versus stochastic momentum signature? Because that would obviously have major implications for much more severe downside. So I think that's a good place for me to be leaving off on this particular video. Maybe a little bit too long, but I wanted to fit everything in there because there's a lot of moving parts right now, and this is kind of one of the more fun times in the market where we're actually like seeing things change around on a pretty frequent base. Can't fucking speak, man, because I didn't get enough sleep last night, but that's okay. Anyways, I will sign off on that particular note. Yes, I wanted to make one more announcement. If you are a graphical designer, if you can make thumbnails, good thumbnails, then send me an email at eric@crowntrading.net with I don't know, maybe like some maybe some shit that you've done, maybe something that you could do for myself, because I am looking for a new thumbnail creator. So yeah, we'll go from there. And with that said, I want to be wishing you the best as always. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully soon.